my wizards Dev from the place with the decks, and we got one today. In fact, we're doing Jund finally. Yeah, when I took votes for Teamer versus Jund, I forgot to account for personality types. Jund people have no patience for democracy. I'd forgotten that Teamer people are like fun and happy, and they like love and candy. And Jund people, they like pain and fire and death. And I don't want to make the Jund people mad because they will come for me. Lots of comments on this actually. Probably the scariest one is this one. The period at the end implies that I will be killed if I do not do this, so I'm doing it. This is Jund. Well, I took inspiration for this deck from The Rock, not Dwayne Johnson or the Sean Connery movie, but The Rock. It's an old Magic deck that we played years back now, that's just not seen very often anymore. It's usually a green-black shell that revolves around, you know, good 4 and 5 drop creatures, early game removal and things like that. So I took inspiration for this deck from that deck. So let's hop aboard our Jundums and go off to Junderland so we can give some fools the Jundered hand slap like E Honda. End of Jund jokes. Now, we have 14 creatures in the main deck of this thing. Actually, I'm tempted to call this Jund Control, but it's not that. It's really a mid-range deck. 2 copies of Rakshasa Death Dealer to start us off. Rakshasa, Rakshasa, Rakshasa. I really like this card. I always have. We see it in a lot of decks, whether it's Abzan or anything that really plays green-black, because good early game creature for multiple reasons. Very versatile, can block and deal, you know, do work for you, can swing in and do work for you, survives a lot of spot removal, that's awesome, you know, just a lot of really good things about Death Dealer, and it's one of the best things we could play early on in our curve. If we play anything early on in our curve, you know, I was thinking about like a mana accelerant, maybe something like Rattleclaw Mystic, but that doesn't produce all the mana we need it to produce, so I just didn't end up playing any Rampers or anything in this deck. This, we can play a Crux of Fate, not choose dragons, and totally still regenerate it, you know. There's other things that we can do. Just Rakshasa's Death Dealer, very versatile, very good creature. 3 copies of Den Protector, yeah, it just shows up in everything with green, you know, and there's a reason for that. Especially in something like this, we're playing an awful lot of spells, removal, and stuff like that, and this can get our creatures back, obviously, but a lot of the times we'll be getting back removal that we've played so that we can play it twice, you know, and Den Protector is really good for that. And anything else that slips through the cracks that we really don't want in our graveyard, which happens quite often. So, yeah, Den Protector, an important creature in green decks, and this one obviously no different. A deck like this wants this card very much. What did I just say? A deck like this wants this card very much? Yeah, it's just the same thing with this. Nissa. Imagine the old rock decks had Nissa, man. This is a perfect card for a deck like this. Helps out your consistency in the early game, and in the late game becomes a beater or card advantage, or both on subsequent turns. So everything about Nissa is good. I don't think I'm shocking anybody by saying that Nissa is a good card. Turns out Nissa is good. 2 copies of Death Mist Raptor. This obviously pairs with Den Protector really well. It's like a good wine and cheese, Den Protector and Death Mist Raptor. Just keeps coming back forever. I mean, obviously the only creature we're flipping up, as far as I can tell, is Den Protector, but that is just fine. We don't need to be flipping up a bunch of creatures to make this work. Death Mist, really good, just keeps coming back, and we don't have to play hardly any morphers to make it good. I mean, a 3-mana, 3/3 Death Touch is good on its own, and sometimes it's a 4/4 Death Touch. It's Death Mist, yes. Again, versatility, resiliency, everything we need it to be. 2 copies of Tasigur in the main deck, yeah. Just every deck that can play this guy plays this guy, and it's totally obvious why. I've played with Tasigur a few times in the past, and he's just always as good as everyone says he is. His ability to get a card back from your graveyard doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it ends up being, you know, whatever. Just is insane. It really helps us out in the long game, and we can play this pretty early in the game with all the spells that we're playing and stuff. So, and what is it, 5 copies of fetch lands? So we can easily play this very early on, and it's just a beast all games. Good card. And finally, 3 copies of Dragon Lord Tarka. If we want to dominate the late game and we're playing green and red in the deck, I really don't see anything better option-wise than this, right? I mean, it is very high up on the curve. This is the whole reason I wanted to play Mana Rampers. Didn't end up doing it because we make it to the late game very easily. We're playing a lot of lands. We have, you know, Nissa in the deck to help us get those lands. There's a lot of different ways that we'll get enough lands to play this card, especially after we take control in the mid to late game. Hopefully, that's the whole philosophy of the deck. And after we play this, it's just a huge bomb. They have to deal with it immediately, or they will lose the game. I mean, they take 13 damage in the first, you know, one revolution of a turn that it's out. So I mean, they have to deal with it, and often they cannot. Now on to the spells, and we're playing an awful lot of them. We're playing 18 spells and 2 planeswalkers in the deck. Let's go ahead and start off with 3 copies of Duress. I want to get that out of the way. Again, rock decks, they always play, you know, some amount of discard element. And we see this in Abzan too. They play Thoughtseize, and sometimes they'll even play Thoughtseize and Duress. I really wish we could play Thoughtseize. We're not playing Theros or M15 in this deck. Really hope we get an like a decent replacement for that. I think Duress is supposed to be the replacement for Thoughtseize. But that aside, we need something like this very, very much against Control, which is an interesting but often lopsided in the first game matchup for us. We are not great in the first game against Control. Although we seek a 50-50 matchup in the first game against most of the decks in the format, and we achieve it for the most part with all the removal, mostly, because we got a lot of creature-based decks in the format. We're making a lot of asides today, but in any case, Duress is something we need very much, even against non-control-based decks, like, you know, mono-red aggro, and things that play a Tarkus or Dromoka's command, we can rip those out of their hand. Other mid-range decks that play Languish and stuff, and we don't want them to languish us. We want to be in charge of who gets to languish around here. So there's just a lot of other things, a lot of things we need this for, so we're playing it. Let's talk about removal. I'm going to put a few up on the screen here at the same time. We're playing 2 copies of Wild Slash and a copy of Fiery Impulse, 2 copies of Ultimate Price, and 1 copy of Roast. So, and we do have some more removal, but this is sort of the premium early game removal that we can play that really helps us get into the later turns, which is where we want to be. That's sort of the whole philosophy of the deck, is that the first, 3 turns maybe, we want to remove their guys. We want to keep it from getting out of hand and taking too much damage until we can stabilize. And these are the cards that really help us get to that point in the game. Just perfect early game cards. Think of them as your 1 and 2 drops. We're playing 1 copy of Foul Tongue Invocation in the deck because we're playing the 3 Atarkas, obviously. We don't need this, don't get me wrong. It's a fairly flexible slot, but I've liked it every time I've ended up playing it. Even if you don't reveal Atarka off of this, it's still pretty good. I mean, 3 mana, they sack a guy, obviously, on curve, on your 3rd turn. This is a pretty decent play. I mean, you'll be getting rid of something at the very least. And if you can reveal an Atarka, this is obviously really good against aggro. That extra 4 life does you a world of good. Foul Tongue Invocation, really good, and I was very, very tempted to make this Jund Dragons. So much so, actually, that I had Jund Dragons written out here on this sheet of paper before I started recording this, and just went with this alternate Jund deck. I've been testing both of them for a while now, and yeah, at the end of the video I'll put up that Jund Dragons list, don't worry. But I feel like this is the more consistent thing in this format right now, and it just has more answers as opposed to just trying to overpower them. So I ended up playing this build, but Foul Tongue Invocation stuck around, at least the 1-of copy. 2 copies of Kolaghan's Command in the deck. It has the distinction of being good against aggro and control, which is really good, and we need all the help against control especially that we can get. So I can't help but like the card. It does all the good things for us. We got a copy of Read the Bones in the deck. I'll just talk about that really quickly. It's cool this was reprinted in Magic Origins. We need some sort of card draw element in the deck. This is good against mid-range. It's good against control. We may side it out against aggro. But for the most part, you always like when you see this card. And even some Abzan decks will play the 1 copy of this. I mean, it's really good a lot of the time. Some mass removal in the main here. 1 copy of Languish and 1 copy of Crux of Fate in the main deck. We'll see more in the board. But in any case, obviously, it's pretty obvious what these 2 cards do. They just safety valves in the mid-game against aggro decks so that we can start playing our cards. So, I mean, again, I don't think anybody's shocked by the inclusion of these. Here's where it gets random. I included these 3 cards at the end because I think they're the most flexible slots, sort of. The first one I'll talk about is a very important slot, but I can see if you wanted to play something else. I want to talk about Dark Petition here for just a second. Dark Petition has been really good. It obviously facilitates us playing this more toolboxy kind of style, and we can play a lot of things off of it. We can play a Foul Tongue Invocation. We can play Duress, obviously, Ultimate Price, We can chip in for a Kolaghan's Command. We can play Read the Bones off of it. We can get all but 1 mana for a Languish. I mean, there's a lot of things that this card does, and we've really got to have it. This gets Tassiger, and a lot of times we can play it, off the delve. So lots of cool things, and helps us out. You always see a tutor in the old school rock decks too. It used to be Vampiric Tutor, best tutor of all time. But instead, we have this, which is still a fine tutor. one copy of Crater's Claws in the deck, another holdover from Jund Dragons, but that's totally fine. At least the one copy helps us out. It can be a game-winning finisher, or in the later game can take out their biggest guy, or in the early game can take out a small guy. There's really nothing wrong with Crater's Claws. It does a lot of things. It's a fairly versatile card for a fireball in this format. I like it. And here's the biggest oddball and the most flexible slot in the deck, although I am very surprised by the performance of this card. I don't see it very often, but a one-of copy of Nissa's Pilgrimage, which has just been good. Nissa's Pilgrimage has been nothing but good. A fantastic ramp card, facilitates Nissa flipping, helps you play a Tarka sooner, and this is just a really, really good setup card, especially, it's sort of bolstered by all the removal we see in the deck, you know. We can remove a guy, play Nissa's Pilgrimage, remove a guy, all on subsequent turns, and then start really building up our base. After this ramp. I mean, and even late game, it's a fine card. Thins your deck out to where you won't draw those lands, which is cool. And you always need mana in this deck. We're very, very hungry in this deck, whether we're activating Rakshasa Death Dealer's ability or trying to play up to an Atarka. So we've got to have something, and this really helps when you see it. And finally, for the main deck, 2 copies of Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker. Just a huge threat in the deck. Obviously, this is removal that just sits on the battlefield, and is a game-ending threat that just sits on the battlefield. I would play more Sarkhans if I was comfortable with that. I want to see him more often, but when we do see him, he is often an in-game option for us. The guy is just, I really can't say enough about him. He's really, really, really good, and if we can just, you know, make him a dragon every turn and swing in, there are definitely situations we can put ourselves into where that's just game for us, you know. So Sarkhan, I think, is a must in this deck. 26 lands, and I think that the land base is one of the hardest parts of the deck, to be honest with you. We'll be helped out by some of these lands that we just saw spoiled for BFZ, but I can't list those just yet in this deck. So we will be helped out, but for now, the land base for Jund is kind of screwy, and it does slightly hurt our consistency sometimes, because we're trying to make equal amounts of most of these colors. A little bit more green, you know, slightly more black than red. But here is the board, the great equalizer. Part of the philosophy of a rock deck is that games are supposed to get better after board. You're looking for, say, a 50-50 matchup of 4 boards, and then maybe a 70-30 or 65-35 after boards in your favor. So the sideboard is tailored a little bit to our format. Again, we won't know what the format's going to be like after BFZ comes out, but I think that this gives us a healthy dose of help against both aggro, which goes a little up under us if unchecked, and against control, which goes way over us and denies us the ability to play some of our threats. Even though we do have some resiliency, you know, we have Dim Protector, we have Tassiger. If we can resolve those cards, then we do very well. So we have pretty good game 1, but we are helped out tremendously by the board game 2. Here are the power rankings. A 62, which is ironically the same as the Teamer Dragons deck that I just did the other day, which, you know, Teamer Dragons beat out Jund in the voting, which is, maybe there's a rivalry happening here, and I did not plan this. It just happens to be a 62. A lot of high numbers there, especially that versatility stat, which is supposed to be sort of our specialty. We want to be good, again, have a good 50-50 game or so against every possible matchup in the format, which I think we do a pretty good job of. A lot of our cards do multiple things for us, which is very important depending on the board state or where we are turn-wise in the game. So I think we do a very good job of being versatile. The land base could be a little more consistent. We do have a bit of an issue there. And we're not synergetic at all. I mean, we just play all the good cards, you know. That was the philosophy that Ari Lax pinned to Abzan earlier on in the year. He said, we just play all the good cards. I think that's the same philosophy here. We just play the good cards. Not a single card in the deck is, you know, bad. I know that Nissa's Pilgrimage is going to ruffle some feathers, but Nissa's Pilgrimage has been crazy, and I fully support that you do something else with that slot. Oh, and with Crater's Claws, one more thing about that, I really considered playing Ravaging Blaze. My personal preference is to play Ravaging Blaze, but I understand the community will probably support Crater's Claws over Blaze in that slot, especially considering we have a problem producing double red, but I love Ravaging Blaze, pet card of mine. So that's the power rankings right there. Well, I'm pretty sure that's all I got for now. Next time, $10 deck techs come back. We're going to do Simic, which definitely won out over Mono Black, although Mono Black started mounting an offensive towards the end there, but just wasn't enough to overcome the power of Simic, which I was sort of, in a way, rooting for anyway. I really, really like Simic as a color combination, and it's got a lot of really good budget options for that kind of deck. So I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you guys are too. If you enjoyed this content, remember to please like, share, comment, subscribe. It really does us a lot of good. And thanks for all the new subscribers lately. I mean that sincerely. It's super awesome. So I'll see you guys next time, man. I'm Dev from SPMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.